Welcome into the Baltimore Ravens Rundown. My name is Joey Petersen, and it is my fourth mock draft of this offseason. And this one, I promise you, is going to be Lamar Jackson's favorite. Got himself some elite weapons in the 10 picks for the Baltimore Ravens coming up on this mock. But real quickly, we got weekly mock drafts here all offseason long. We've done 4 already. We got a lot more to go until late April. And if you love this segment, please let me know by hitting that thumbs up button. It is always nice to know that these are appreciated, that you guys love watching these as much as I love doing them. So if you are a fan of these segments, go ahead, hit that thumbs up button and like today's video. There's no lie that the Baltimore Ravens' biggest needs draft-wise are in the trenches. Offensive line at the guard spots, and heck, if Tyler Linderbaum's in the exit door as well at the center spot. Defensive line in the interior, on the edge. And then you get to positions like cornerback, linebacker, wide receiver. I would say maybe throw wide receiver in that third spot, cornerback, linebacker. You can put those last 3 wherever you want them, but offensive line and defensive line definitely are the top 2. But this is a mock draft that Lamar Jackson will really, really like. And you get to 14, and this is a guy that will be very, very hard to pass on. And that's where I'm going with my first selection. Number 14 overall, give me Jordyn Tyson, wide receiver out of Arizona State. I get it. I just talked about how important the trenches were. And I'm just going to assume that in this mock draft, they got the trenches taken care of in the offseason. And this feels like one of those moments where it might be a CeeDee Lamb 2020 Dallas Cowboys moment. Dallas didn't necessarily need wide receiver at that spot, right? They had Amari Cooper. They had some talented tight ends. They had a really talented offense, but they never thought CeeDee Lamb would fall that far, down to 17. They couldn't believe it. They couldn't pass up on him, and that's where maybe I feel and I believe that Baltimore might be with Jordyn Tyson. Okay, let me let you guys know a little bit more on the wideout. 61 receptions in 2025, only played 9 games, dealt with a little bit of injuries, which is his history. Definitely something to be a little bit cautious of, but 711 receiving yards, 11.7 yards a catch, 8 touchdowns, and 1 drop. Now, why do we even mention drops? Well, it's because the year prior to that, in 2024, when he originally flashed onto the scene, he had 7 drops. So he made a massive, massive improvement from one year to the next, and I think that is definitely something that needs to be discussed, needs to be talked about, because after 2024, everybody said, you got this elite prospect, this guy who could be very, very talented, but he drops the football too much. Well, he didn't drop it nearly at all in 2025. One thing I like about him is he gives you kind of a little bit of a new look for a Ravens wide receiver. Like, he's not quite a massive, X wide receiver, like a Megatron, but still 6'2", 200 pounds. I love the size on him. I love going away from smaller 5'10", 5'11", shifty wide receivers to getting a guy who's a very, very good route runner, great contested catch ability, but still has the ability to turn on the afterburners and get away from the cornerbacks and go make a play. Look, the wide receiver room, a little bit of a question right now. Zay Flowers, is he a wide receiver 1? Rashad Bateman, was he a waste of money? DeAndre Hopkins is a free agent. Tylan Wallace, LaJohntay Wester, those guys don't get utilized. Jordyn Tyson, I have zero hesitations about his ability to come into an NFL franchise and be a wide receiver 1 in this league. Grade the pick for me. A, B, C, D, or F down below in the comment section. Let me know where you stand on it. Be honest with me, okay? Don't sugarcoat it. I can take the criticism. I can also take the praise if you love it. On to round 2 we go. Now we will address the offensive line with a pretty dang good prospect as well. Let's talk about Emmanuel Pregnon from the University of Oregon, offensive guard. Played right guard this past year for the Ducks, left guard this past year for the Ducks. Almost 800 total snaps this past season, which is a ridiculous number. Obviously, it helps when a team like Oregon goes all the way to the playoff and even wins a couple of playoff games. 88.2 overall grade, 88 pass block, 88.3 in the run block. Really, really consistent. Only 1 penalty, 0 sacks allowed. And I feel like this is one of those selections that, for a value perspective, is a really, really good one. Because there are arguments that a guy like Vega Awane is somewhere around the 25th, 28th best prospect. And if you get him at 14, sure, you'd fill that need at offensive guard, but technically that's a pretty big reach if you're looking at best player available. But if Emmanuel falls all the way down to your second-round selection, from a value perspective, that is an unbelievable pick. I'm tired of Daniel Falele. Thank God he's a free agent. Tired of Andrew Voorhees. Thank God he's a free agent. You need somebody to be able to come in here and be a starter year one, and you need the big jump from Emory Jones Jr. into year two, and bang, your guard situation might be figured out for the future. We did trenches in round 2. Let's go trenches in round 3 as well. Pick number 80. Give me Darrell Jackson Jr., defensive tackle out of Florida State. He was one of the lone bright spots for the Seminoles this past season. Did not have a very good year outside of that first game against Alabama, but Darrell Jackson Jr. did have a pretty solid year on the interior. 45 tackles, 3 tackles for loss, a sack, 14 pressures as well. This is one of those guys that, like, I promise you, he is going to go to the scouting combine, and he is going to just leap off the page just because of the physical traits he has and the athleticism that he has as well. Started his career in Miami back in 2022, then transferred to Florida State. His biggest year, actually, from a sack and pressure perspective, was 2024, 3.5 sacks, 30 pressures. But you just need help on the interior. It feels like, Nadame Metabike is going to be back in the lineup. Maybe. If you look at his Twitter, you can see he's kind of been hinting at it over the last couple of weeks. Regardless, you need depth there. And Darrell Jackson Jr. is that depth. And he's pretty dang good depth at that, okay? So I think getting interior defensive line in the third is a really good option. But that's not the only help you need on the defensive line, right? You could have some help on the edge as well, and that is where Nadame Tucker comes in, out of Western Michigan, edge rusher. This dude is one of the bigger sleepers in the draft, okay? He's one of those guys that, oh my goodness, if you watch the tape, he jumps up like no other. Now, he doesn't play the stiffest of competition over there in the MAC, but still, stats, numbers, and just pure abilities, nobody can take those away. 14.5 sacks in 2025, 51 pressures, 90.6 overall grade, 92.7 pass rush grade, a win percentage against a true pass set, 40.8%, number one in all of college football, okay? It might feel a little bit Mike Greenish because he was a guy last year from a small school in Marshall that absolutely dominated. And Mike Green, maybe he didn't have as good of a rookie year as you thought he was going to, but also I look at the scheme change that's about to come from Zach Orr to Jesse Minter, and I just feel like you're about to get better play from your edge rushers. Let's add another young stud with a really, really high ceiling. And the funny thing about edge is we've been talking about it all offseason long, and Anthony Weaver discussed it a little bit in his press conference on Wednesday. He said, look, we certainly have rushers from a talent perspective. We have dudes who can get there. And I don't necessarily agree with that. That's why I'm hitting it in the first 4 rounds. Wherever you do draft edge rusher, whether it's first round, second round, third round, fourth round, I do believe it needs to be a top 4 round pick for the Baltimore Ravens. Where do you think the Ravens should draft an edge? Fill in that blank for me. The Ravens should draft edge in the blank round. You let me know down below in the comment section. Weigh in with your answer and tell me what you think. We got more picks coming up, okay? So do not go anywhere. But real quickly, we got to tell you about our awesome sponsor, our friends over at Prize Picks. And you could shoot your shot on Prize Picks and get $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5. That's right. Prize Picks is now giving you $50 in lineups when you sign up and play your first $5. Prize Picks makes every dunk, every dime, and every board that much more exciting. So don't miss this chance to get started on America's #1 app for sports picks. Prize Picks is simple to play. Just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections. If you get your picks right, you could cash in. Pick from all your favorite sports, anything from basketball, baseball, hockey, UFC, soccer, college basketball, tennis, golf, esports, and more. Prize Picks now has early payouts. If your play gets off to a hot start, you now have the option to cash out those winnings before the game finishes. Even though the big game is over and it feels like football season is over with it, this is what is so cool about our friends at Prize Picks because you can look to the next season as well. I'm going to take the more on Myles Garrett, 13.7 5 sacks. The more on Saquon Barkley, 1,225 rushing yards. And I'm also going to take the more on Justin Jefferson, 7.5 rushing touchdowns. If all of these, go good for your boy, I could be cashing in and winning big with our friends over at Prize Picks. So download the Prize Picks app today and use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Link to this promo is in the comments and description of today's video. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. We thank Prize Picks for sponsoring today's show and making it free to each and every one of you. Let's go into round 5, pick number 152. Let's address the needs at tight end with Joe Royer out of Cincinnati. You signed Mark Andrews to a contract extension in the middle of last season. I think that was a mistake, but they did it nonetheless. You cannot go back. Isaiah Likely, Charlie Kolar, free agents. You need another tight end on this roster, and I think Royer is a very, very interesting prospect. He is a matchup nightmare. Needs to improve a little bit in the blocking aspect of things, but his ability to be a pass catcher is really, really impressive. 29 receptions on 33 targets, really soft hands, 416 yards, 14.3 yards catch, 4 touchdowns. But the most impressive year he had definitely wasn't 2024. Look at that. 50 receptions. Actually broke Travis Kelce's reception record for tight ends in Cincinnati in 2024. And I was talking about this room earlier. When you look at this depth chart, you see only one guy who is guaranteed to be a Baltimore Raven in 2026, and that is Mark Andrews. Other than that, you need some people. And with Declan Doyle now being the offensive coordinator, being a Ben Johnson disciple, Ben Johnson loves to use tight ends as fullbacks because he likes to have a bigger, more athletic type guy in there than just a fullback who's not really a threat when he catches the ball. Not a threat to catch the ball. So tight ends are going to be very, very important for Doyle. I think they re-signed Kolar, let Likely walk in free agency, draft a tight end in the first 5 or 6 rounds. I think Royer would be a great pick. Let's continue on with the 5th round picks. This one is going to be Hezekiah Masses, cornerback out of Cal. I think that cornerback is a pretty big need for the Baltimore Ravens. Still really don't know what's going to happen with the future of Marlon Humphrey. Very, very big cap hit for the 2026 season. Wouldn't be surprised if you see another restructure. Wouldn't be surprised if you see him cut, if you see him traded, or if you see nothing happen. Regardless, you need depth in that position. And at 6'1", 185 pounds, I think this guy's a pretty solid frame to kind of start investing in now. As a 5th round pick, you don't expect him to come in and be a year 1, day 1 starter, but for his abilities in coverage, his abilities to make play on the football, 13 pass deflections, 5 interceptions at Cal this last year, I think it's definitely a smart investment to make and a guy who I could see having a really strong future in Baltimore with the right coaching, which you believe you've brought in with Jesse Minter, who specializes in defensive backs. In round 5, pick number 172, you're going to go back to the G5 and you're going to get Kaleb Proctor out of southeastern Louisiana. That actually might be FCS, southeastern Louisiana. It is? Gage would be 100% sure, but I trust you, Ethan, back there. 87.4 PFF grade for Proctor in 2025. That was 9th out of 885 defensive tackles. Pass rush grade, really, really impressive. 90.2. Second, pressures 40. Second out of 885 guys. Run defense could be a little bit better. That's definitely where he needs to improve. But I think this is the small school guy you could take a shot on in the 5th. Let's keep building up that offensive line, shall we? We drafted Emmanuel in the 2nd round. Let's go back to guard and get Kobe Baynes out of Kansas with the pick number 173. Again, I told you guys, a lot of 5th round picks for the Baltimore Ravens coming up in the 2026 NFL draft. I think that, this is a guy that could be a really, really solid depth piece for this offensive line. Could be a guy that, under the right development could even fight for a starting spot. Maybe not this year, but maybe next year. Maybe you supplement that starting spot with a free agent, and then you give it over to Kobe Baynes. Regardless, I trust Dwayne Ledford as your new offensive line coach, and I think that is one of those positions with Daniel Faalele hitting the exit door and Voorhees hitting the exit door. You just need to get as many young and promising bodies as you can in the room. That is it with the 5th round picks. Let's go to the 7th round. And let's go back into the wide receiver room. Let's get Trebor Pena, wide receiver out of Penn State. Now, for Pena, the statistics weren't anything like unbelievable for him in 2025 with the Penn State Nittany Lions. But let's call a spade a spade. Statistics for any wide receivers from Penn State really weren't that good. They could have had Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson. And I think with that quarterback play and that offense, those guys probably would have struggled to break the 500-yard mark. Pena had 452 yards, touchdown, 43 yards was his longest. 5'10", 186 pounds, definitely a smaller type wide receiver, relies on shiftiness, athleticism to get open, makes plays the ball after he's got it in his hands. He, prior to his stop at Penn State, was in Illinois, where he really made his name heard. And then when Penn State added him in the transfer portal over the offseason, they said, okay, they're finally getting serious about the wide receiver position. And then their quarterback play ended up being a joke. So I think he could be a good late-round steal. Again, it's the 7th round, so you don't really expect too much of these guys, especially in year one. Speaking of the wide receiver room, what's your confidence level that Zay Flowers is a wide receiver 1 in the NFL? Scale it for me 1 to 100 down below in the comment section. I think a lot of people are kind of sitting where I'm at as well, 50-50. I want to hear what you guys think down below in the comments. We're going to round out this mock draft with another 7th round pick at 252. Let's take Connor Tollison, center out of Missouri. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens with Tyler Linderbaum over this offseason. And getting in a guy who was a 12-game starter for the Mizzou Tigers, I think would be a pretty solid plan of, maybe start planting some seeds and getting some depth at that position. I think it is of Baltimore's best interest to bring back Tyler Linderbaum, but who knows what they'll do. They'll have a lot of big decisions coming up over the next couple of months. That's going to do it for today's show. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. Bit of a longer one today, but hey, we love doing these mock drafts. Make sure you guys got me followed on socials. Make sure you are subscribed as well. Every single Sunday, we get you a brand new mock draft all the way into the NFL draft, so make sure to lock us in.